Today we will talk about this layer 2 XLM project that I can't say ST sounds extremely well, so we're just going to call it light, which I don't do well on L's either. So we will come up with some way to actually communicate this today. But it's important because this is essentially the XLM version of the Bitcoin Lightning network that has come into the crypto news again over the last couple of weeks because there are some concerns about the security of it all. And I'll also tie in a couple of things about JP Morgan again as well, because I found some interesting information that kind of hints at the project North Star again. And I explained that I think that JP Morgan Chase could be implementing XLM with their bridge protocol that I covered in a video yesterday as well. So I hope my mouth works a little bit more efficiently today. So there are 1.08 billion Visa cards active on its network that runs at 65,000 TPS. That is a high end. The actual is probably about 5 to 10% of that. There are 1.4 billion people unbanked. XLM Layer 2 Lite will enable two computers to conduct 1 million transactions per second with a normal internet connection. This is from the article from the SDF that I will cover, but here is where that 1 million transactions per second comes from and how it works, which I'll explain more on in a bit. This is from 2022, but in July of 2022, XLM had processed over 1 billion payments. And as an example, when Light actually launches, which I'm 99% sure it hasn't yet, we should be able to process another billion within about half an hour. So we are talking about a very large volume of transactions here. And it's not even just peer-to-peer normal XLM transactions. It is a layer 2 protocol that runs on top of XLM that makes it even quicker. So here is that piece about the Bitcoin Lightning network that I believe that a lot of us have seen by now, that the Bitcoin Lightning network just hasn't effectively been able to increase in its in its effectiveness when it's been trying to operate at a larger volume. It just hasn't been adopted because of the technical drawbacks of how it works. I am not an expert in that, but that's about the extent that I know, and it's honestly the extent that I am actually interested in, because I'm not a fan of Bitcoin. It doesn't really accomplish anything other than it was the first one. So Bitcoin developers found a massive security risk in the Bitcoin Lightning network. He claims there are intentional backdoors in code that allow hackers or attackers to get full control of the entire Lightning network itself, which triggered him to depart from the actual project, which you can see more of here. But I mention this because Light is essentially the Bitcoin Lightning network of XLM, which is already hundreds, if not thousands of times faster than the Bitcoin network and the Bitcoin Lightning network as well. Here is a really interesting chart that I found. This is essentially a map of the actual light network itself. It's obviously very complicated, but this actually provides a much clearer picture overall of how it actually works. So all of this is explained in this article here from 2021, but it is valuable to actually have it in this form as well. It was put together by the XX1133122111 guy, who puts out a lot of really good information like this, and it has helped me to connect a lot of these different projects and assets, and how so many of them are much more intertwined than even I was aware of. In particular, XLM, XRP, and XDC are heavily intertwined with each other in the payments and the CBDC spaces. So there's not really a great place to start here, but I'm just gonna try to run through the article first and then explain it. So they are concentrating on fast payments, right? And that has led them to create the actual light layer 2 payment channel protocol. Payment channels are a category of layer 2 protocols that support fast payments between two participants, and they have shown that they can also use them for high throughput payments as well, over 1 million payments per second between two individual people or companies or entities. Light is an L2 protocol that defines a bidirectional half duplex payment channel. I'm at least somewhat familiar with those terms in my experience in engineering and oil and gas. I was a controls and instrumentation guy, even though I'm not very electrically inclined. I'm actually a mechanical engineer, but I just ended up in that. But the bidirectional relay channel is the natural extension of a 3-terminal relay channel where a node transmits to node B with the help of relay R to allow for two-way communications between nodes A and B. That probably doesn't really mean a whole lot, but this right here is probably more important. A half duplex, it was half, right? Yeah, half. A half duplex system, both parties can communicate with each other, but not at the same time. It works in a one-way communication protocol, which would make sense because you are transmitting payment information from one person to a different person, which is a common example of that would be a push to talk walkie-talkie, right? So it has a lot to do with these different protocol upgrades. Now, this was back in 13, 14, and 15. I believe we just passed protocol 20, but cap 21 and cap 40 are the newer parts of this. So there are 3 concepts that make it, the light payment channel protocol actually work how it works. One is transaction preconditions. So cap 21 adds new preconditions that can be added to transactions. These are conditions that must be met for a transaction to actually be valid. One example would be time bounds. A transaction needs to be submitted during its time bounds. Cap 21 adds ledger bounds, minimum sequence number, extra signers, as well as the ability to create relative time locks. Light uses the minimum sequence number precondition so that groups of transactions can bypass sequence numbers on accounts. This means that clients only need to hold on to their most recent agreement. There's no need to keep or revoke old agreements, as they are invalidated by new ones. There's a relative time lock, so that when a payment channel is closing, a delay can be inserted between the beginning of the close process and its completion, which gives the other participant an opportunity to update the close to the most recent state if the participant accidentally or intentionally began that under an old agreement. The extra signers precondition can be used as a way to attach a hash component to a transaction off network. We expect Light could use this in the future to facilitate payments that move across multiple payment channels on multiple payment networks, is what that actually means. Then you have atomic signature disclosure. Cap 40 extends Cap 21 and adds a new type of signer, the signature of another transaction. Light uses this to atomically authorize multiple transactions by disclosing the signature for one transaction inside of another, which makes it safe for a multi-participant, multi-transaction contract protocol to pass multiple transactions at once, which reduces the number of points in the process and the potential channel states, and increases the number of agreements that Light can process per second. Ugh. And then the third, which is probably the most interesting, is called buffering, and it's a prototype that is not in the Light protocol yet, but it is one pattern that is well suited to be used on top of it. Payment channels like Light are usually constrained by the latency of the network on which they actually operate. For example, if it's 20 ms, then the maximum possible throughput would be 50 transactions per second. That's just 1 second divided by, or one transaction divided by 20 ms. Buffering makes use of available network bandwidth by collecting payments during that time and sending them over the wire together in a single agreement. The limit is transformed into 50 agreements per second, and each agreement can hold a number of different individual payments, which means that it can essentially combine a ton of different payments into one high low latency latency transaction, which is where you get that 1.19 million payments per second from. They have shown that Light can produce 38 payments per second unbuffered, and 1.19 million payments per second buffered in 12 agreements per second, which was observed between two participants over the internet using consumer hardware and residential internet services. So that's essentially all of us here, which is huge because for large companies and institutions, it's the maximum capacity could be a lot more. So that is the main of it there. And then this actually just explains more of what happens in that process. So let's just begin with one, right? A signs and sends three transactions over to B. Open, declaration, and close. B signs those and sends them back to A to authorize the actual opening agreement. 2. A submits a multi-signature open agreement to create light channel, and which then goes up into the actual protocol itself on an open transaction. B makes deposits to the channel with different XLM anchors or wallet at any time. So that's kind of like what we talked about in my video yesterday about the bridge protocol. A and B can move funds back and forth before closing the channel for final net settlement, which is then sent back to the XLM chain itself. 3. A makes deposits to channel with anchors. Oh, I actually got a little bit out of order there. I apologize. So 4 is what we were talking about for that approximately 1.19 million transactions per second, right? So 4 is buffering payments, which you collect a number of payments while an agreement is being authorized. So a collection of payments bundles into a buffer during the latency delay, allowing up to 1.2 million TPS. Each agreement will contain all payments buffered during that time, and the speed and size are based on bandwidth and latency as well. So 5, each party signs and authorizes agreement on final balances and submits it to the actual network itself. Only final declaration needs submitting once parties sign agreements without having any issues. So you are conducting a lot of the actual payment transactions off of the actual XLM network, which is what makes it even faster than operating on XLM itself, which is already very fast, especially compared to Bitcoin and Ethereum as well. So this is, I should have actually opened it up earlier, but I have explained a lot about this in my XLM deep dive. I did probably mid-September now. I tried to at least provide an overview on these, but this is the part that we are talking about here. I covered this yesterday, and I'll put that link in the description, and this is what we are talking about today. And this spacewalk is what we will actually talk about tomorrow. That is a thing that is kind of like bridge, but it is working with Polkadot to open XLM up to multiple different kinds of crypto networks and assets. So this is from Whiplash 347, which he's a little bit far-fetched and conspiratorial, but I do think there is a lot of information there. So Light makes bridge possible. Bridge makes Project Dunbar possible. Project Dunbar has XDC as a bridge coin for CBDCs in between four different countries. I think it's Australia, South Africa, Malaysia, and someone else I can't remember off of the top of my head. That ties into Protocol 19, which we're in Protocol 20 now. So that is a bit older and there's more information there, but I won't expand upon that too much at this point. So here's an article that is just providing a little bit more of an overview. It is actually from the SDF, I think, but it just compares it to the Bitcoin Lightning Network again. But it also says Light not only provides payment channels, but also multi-hop payments across those channels as well, such as Lightning and the Interledger protocol, which, as we know, is a major connector into XRP. So it doesn't have a ton there, but this is the JP Morgan additional connection I found. So in my video yesterday, where I was hypothesizing that JP Morgan's JPM coin that runs on the Ethereum based Quorum network talked about Project North STAR. I can't pronounce that easily. And it's interesting because this project name was actually an internal project name for JP Morgan when they were acquiring ConsenSYS, which I believe that they did acquire, or they have now about a 10% ownership in MetaMask as well, which is interesting because that is one way to get public facing Ethereum network exposure. So I just thought that this was really interesting because it calls out that same exact phrase that JP Morgan itself referred to internally, and it's really interesting how this article called that out here, where they are talking about XLM. So it isn't a incredibly positive article. It's from 2021, and it's honestly trying to talk down on XLM, but I do think it's interesting just because of this name here. And then, of course, for fun, for some gematria and astrology stuff, we get these two words kind of equating in one way to the Light project itself. 13 plus 9 equals 22, 11, 11, X equals 24, L equals 12 equals Libra, which is also the sign of lobster. M equals 13, 13 constellations. M13 is one of the brightest in the northern sky. Again, Project North, STAR. So again, we have some ties into that phrase in particular, and it's interesting because there are some connections into what the XLM bridge project is able to do, because it connects into the Ethereum virtual machine. And the SDF is actually on a CFTC advisory panel with JP Morgan as well. So is JP Morgan JPM coin using at least some of XLM tech in order to actually make its JPM coin work? Because on its own, it wasn't really the most effective and efficient option out there, but they were so heavily involved with Ethereum for a long time now that that's what they chose, and that kind of began the whole ETHgate thing with XRP as well. But I just thought it was a pretty interesting connection to go into the hypothesis that I made.